We're going to go ahead and take a look at the bow now. So I've put my violin just back in the case for right now, just for safekeeping. Now if you look at the upper half of your case, the part that is not laying flat on the table, we have our bow tucked away in here. Now over here towards this end of the case, there's usually a little lever or a strap that holds the bow in place. So you can just go ahead and move that up, and then we're just going to gently slide the bow out of the case. Let's talk a little bit about the different parts of the bow. So over here on this end, we have what's called the tip of the bow. And then going down on the top, this wooden part of the bow here is called the stick. Underneath there, we have the hair, and this is horsehair. Now it's very important that you don't touch this with your hands, because your hands have a lot of oils in them, and if we get the oils on the hair, then we won't be able to make the bow sound correctly, because it'll be slippery. Now over on the other end, the opposite end from the stick, or from the tip, we have what's called the frog. And then really close to the frog, we have the adjustment screw. Now the adjustment screw is going to make the bow tighter and looser. So when you put it back into your case, your bow hair should always be loose. There's a very nice curve to the bow, and you want to keep this curve there. So for right now, just go ahead and give a couple of twists on your adjustment screw, just so the bow is just a little bit tighter. And you can always ask your teacher just to see if your bow is too tight or not, but you always want to keep this curve there in the bow. If you get it too tight and it looks more like a bow and arrow, it's way too tight, so just go ahead and loosen up on that adjustment screw. So now we need to talk about our rosin. So rosin is just kind of a hardened tree sap, and inside this part right here I have a new cake of rosin. Now what the rosin does is it makes the bow sticky so that it can actually make the strings vibrate when we draw it across. Now this right here won't make our bow sticky if we just drag the bow across right now, because it's still smooth on the top. So what you need to do is either take some car keys or a pin, and you're actually going to scratch the surface of the rosin to get some of the powder out. Now I have my rosin here, which has been used, and you can kind of see the difference between a new rosin and how the rosin should look when you want to put it on the bow. Okay, so if your rosin looks like this, go ahead and scratch that surface. Okay, and if your rosin looks like this, you're in good shape, so you want to have all the powder there. Okay, so now let's talk about how we're actually going to put the bow with the rosin together. So what you can do is just hold the rosin in one hand, and then you're just going to drag the bow across, just like that, so we can get some rosin onto the bow. Now if it's a brand new bow, it's going to need quite a bit of rosin, but if you've been using it for a while, you might only need to do it about 10 times. My bow is pretty well rosined, but you should be able to see. If your bow is not getting a good sound on the strings, you're going to need to apply more rosin. That could be some of the problem. So now that we have our bow all set to go, what we're going to do is go ahead and combine it together with the instrument to make the sound. So now let's talk about a little bit of how we're going to hold the bow before we play it. So this part of the bow down here was called the frog again. Now I have a little story to help you with your bow grip. I want you to take your right hand, and you're just going to make like a little dog face over here. Okay, bark, 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 little dog. Now this dog is very hungry for frogs, so what he's going to do is he's going to take a big bite out of the frog, just like that. Now his ears, he gets a little sleepy, so this one just falls over, and then this one happens to land, the pinky happens to land on top of this screw. Okay, so just like that. Now it may be a little hard to see on the tape, but this is very important. The biggest thing is to not hold it like a club. It's not going to be something like this. And the reason why we don't hold it that is because we don't have much control over the tension of the bow on the string. So go ahead and take your bite out of the frog. This finger is going to lay down, and then your pinky is going to stay up. So it should be nice and refined, just like that. Okay? So now we're going to go ahead and take our violin out of the case, and remember it's still on that flat surface. So go ahead and grab the shoulder of the violin with your left hand, and then we're just going to go ahead and tuck it right in onto the side. So remember, no violin ties. It's going to be over here on the shoulder. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play some of the open strings. So what I want you to do is you're just going to go ahead and take the bow and gently place it on one of the strings. Any one is fine for right now. What you're going to do is gently drag the bow across the string and you should make the sound. Now, if you're pressing down too hard, the violin can sometimes sound like a strangled cat. So if you get this sound, you're pressing down way too hard on the string, so ease up a little bit. Now if you're not putting enough pressure on the bow, or with the bow, it can also have the opposite effect. You won't get the right sound. Okay, so just make sure, experiment with putting the bow on harder and softer. Now to rotate to get to some of the other strings, I want you to think of your elbow over here as kind of like an elevator. So we're playing on the highest string right now. And to play onto the lower strings, we're going to lift our elbow up. So it's just like an elevator. Different levels are going to be for the different strings. So go ahead and try playing on some of the different strings. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and played with some of that, let's go ahead and put the instrument away. Now to begin packing up for the day, once you're done practicing, first thing that you can do is just take off the shoulder rest. So just gently slide that off. Okay. And you can put your violin back on a flat surface. Now something that's very important to have is kind of a wood polish cloth. Now if you don't have one of these, they're available in the store or on the website. Just make sure you have a nice cloth like this, because the rosin from the bow is going to get on the strings and it has a tendency to fall underneath the strings as well. So what you're going to do is just kind of brush off the strings a little bit and then brush off underneath the strings in between the bridge and the fingerboard just to remove some of the rosin. So once you have that done, you can just gently put the violin back in the case, and then you can just drape this cloth over the top of it just like that. Now for the bow, we tightened it a little bit while we started to play. So now we're going to loosen it. So you're going to turn it to the left or towards you. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And you just want to make sure that the bow hair is loose, because we want to keep this nice curve. If we kept it in the bow tight, or if we kept it in the case tight, we'd have a problem. We'd lose some of this curvature over time. So make sure it stays nice and loose just like this. You want to see that nice curve. Now to tuck this back into the case, what you're going to do is you're going to stick the tip into this little coverage right here. So you can just slide it in there. And then just make sure that you close it up with your latch right there. Okay. Now if your rosin was out during the practice session, make sure you put that back into your pouch up here at the top. And now your shoulder rest doesn't really fit into the case, and I really don't recommend putting it or trying to force it inside the case, just because you can often put the instrument out of tune or damage it, put unnecessary things. So just go ahead and keep this in a separate bag. So then go ahead and close the case, and notice I didn't force anything shut. I just closed it, and it should just close perfectly on its own. So now we're just going to go ahead and latch up the case. Always make sure that the latches are done. I've seen tons of instruments just picked up and then the instruments fly because the latches weren't closed. So, alright, so now that we've got everything all packed up, we're all set to go for the day. So we've covered the basics on how to put your instrument together, how to make your first sound, and how to care for the instrument in general. Please feel free to review these fundamental videos at any time, and you can also email me with questions or just to let me know how things are going at lessons@bertrandsmusic.com. Take care and keep playing.